this lesson, I want to continue looking at the subject of shaft plane and swing plane. Now the shaft plane is the one that is denoted by the yellow cane at address. That's the address shaft plane. And you'll know from my teaching already, you've read and seen my videos, I've talked to you about the optimum biomechanical swing plane. And the optimum biomechanical swing plane runs from the ball through the upper sternum. Now what you can see with the wedge, there's the shaft plane. I'm going to hinge my wrists, rotate my forearms, and now close the biomechanical plane. And when I get to the top, then that is the plane. The club face, the shaft, the butt of the club are all lying in the optimum biomechanical plane. Now, if I hit a cut, spin, pitch shot, I will return to the shaft plane. However, if I'm hitting a bit of a draw, the shaft might be higher. So generally, at the wedge end of the spectrum, the shaft plane that you start off with, you go into the biomechanical plane, but often you come back to the shaft plane at impact. Particularly if you're playing an open stance shot with cut, then the handle stays low. So there you have it. When we're using a wedge from out to in and playing cut, the shaft plane will be replicated at impact. But as you go through the bag and you hit longer shots, then that's not the case. Now the other thing that's interesting, while we've got these two rods here, is just to notice how much wrist hinge you have. You see, with the driver, you've got a lot of wrist hinge before you start. So with the driver, you find the least amount of wrist hinge in the most amount of time. However, with the wedge, you've got to find the most wrist hinge in the least amount of time. So what that does, it makes your swing upright and wristy and non-rolly. The shorter, more upright shaft dilutes the forearm rotation. There is forearm rotation, but it's diluted because the shoulders and the wrists are working so hard. So let me just show you that one more time. 90 wrist, 90 forearm, 90 shoulder. I'm now living in the optimum biomechanical plane, but I choose to come back and drop the shaft lower. Faldo in 6 majors using just the same technique with pretty much all his irons. So we've just seen the wedge swing, the shaft plane at address and the shaft plane at impact. And what we found was that the shaft stayed low as you hit the cut, spin or the fade shot. Now I'm at the other end of the spectrum with the driver. So again, the bottom cane describes the shaft plane, and then as I swing the club, then I'm going to go up into my optimum swing plane. So if you draw a line from the butt of the club to the ball, it should go down this yellow rod. So just watch that again. Now it must be obvious to you that if the butt of the club is now in this plane, it's departed from the address plane. So there's a journey of the butt of the club rises into the plane. And I can show you lots of photographs at other points in my website where you see pictures of Tiger, Tom Watson and Corbin Olsen, whereas they've gone back into the biomechanical plane and they've hit the ball so hard the shaft rises and they're much closer to the biomechanical plane than they are to the shaft plane at address. So there we have it. There's wrist hinge, of course, there's forearm rotation, and the shoulder turn is now on a flatter plane than the wedge. But there's definitely a rising of the shaft. Now some people say it's a parallel plane. Well, I'm not holding with that because a parallel plane is somewhere over near my bag. It's not a parallel plane at all. The shaft plane at address is an entirely different plane to the biomechanical swing plane made by me with the driver at this point. Now, if I was going to hit you a fade, I would go to the top, and again the shaft would drop lower as I came through the fade mechanism. I would get that sort of effect. As I said, the Faldo effect. But at Tom Watson, Tiger Woods, then coil into the biomechanical plane, come much closer to it, and there you have it. So remember, the address plane is one thing and the optimum biomechanical swing plane is another. With a wedge, the plane is upright, and with the driver, it's much, much flatter.